Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine and the tail end, fingers crossed, of winter, certainly in Johannesburg. Remember last week we chatted about wine from Europe and the fact that I was just back from Greece. The weather in Greece was glorious. The weather in Johannesburg since I've been back has been just a little cooler. And what is the magic antidote to cold weather? Well, it's lots of bottles of lovely red wine and a big fire. Fire is in place, so all I need is the red wine. And this week, 4 bottles that I think do the job absolutely perfectly. Now the first of these is a Cape Fusion, and the moment you see Cape in a red blend, you know it's almost certainly got pinotage in, and this does, but it's not the pinotage that for me is the most eye-catching element, it's this particular sticker. It is the first time we've had a wine that has won an award at the Japan Women's Wine Awards, in this case a silver. There are a couple of other awards, as you can see, but that one certainly the quirkiest award we've encountered yet. But well done to the women of Japan for deciding that the Cape Fusion from Asara was a wine that they rather liked. It's certainly not the most expensive wine Asara make. This is in the 80 to 90 rand a bottle category. The Cape Fusion, as I say, includes the pinotage, and it is the first of our red blends for this week. A recent American article I read had a reference to pinotage that was less than flattering, described it as licking the tar off a freshly laid road. Those of you who subscribe to that kind of theory will hope that the pinotage is drowned out in this blend, whereas the pinotage supporters will hope that it lends a leading role. And I think in this case it is the latter. It's a nice boisterous blend, it's not terribly subtle, but then you're not expecting it to be, and the different grapes come together very nicely with pinotage quite happily playing a leading role. Cape Fusion it is, pinotage leading the charge, and Asara getting a wine that gets my thumbs up, but more importantly, a silver medal from the women of Japan. Next stop for your winter red blend, a wine that was given to me towards the end of the last season of my other show, the Dan Nichols Show, where one of my guests was Neethling, the impossibly good-looking Olympic swimmer who has found a new lease of life as the marketing director and shareholder at Val de Vie. Val de Vie has been an astonishing success story, primarily from a property perspective, but they've developed a wonderful polo culture and some great fields. I've played there a couple of times with limited success, but great enjoyment. And then the wine, a lot of help from Hein Kuchlenberg, who oversees a lot of wine in the broader area and has such a keen and astute mind when it comes to wine, but also a great love of wine and a tradition of wine within the Val de Vie Estate itself. It's lovely to go along, have a look at their cellar, have a look at the Vinotech that they've got, and this is one of the newer additions. The high profile wine is the Neethling itself. That's the Rhone blend that's done really, really well. This is their signature blend. It's pretty much a Cab Sav. It's about 80-85% Cab Sav with a little Malbec thrown in for good measure, but primarily a Cabernet Sauvignon, and for me that's always a lovely, lovely winter wine. So it's mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, and that unsurprisingly is mostly what you're picking up. A little bit of Malbec, I think there's a little touch of Merlot in there as well, a smoothing agent, if you will, but mostly it's a Cab Sav, and a very pleasing Cab Sav at that. I've had quite a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon over this winter, been reminded of how well we do Cabernet Sauvignon in South Africa, and midweek night fire roaring in Johannesburg, or fingers crossed you're sitting in the Cape and it's pouring with rain and not too warm. Fire, nice big bowl of stew, bottle or 2 of this, and Neethling will be just as happy as you will. From almost completely Cabernet Sauvignon to completely Cabernet Sauvignon. This is 100% of the grape. This is from Plaisir de Merle, it's their Cab Sav. I've got some really good memories of Plaisir de Merle. I've hosted a number of functions there. The cellar underneath is just beautiful. It's a great, great function area, and it's accompanied by some terrific wine. I've had a lot of fun tasting their wine, and their Cabernet Sauvignon is one I've had on a regular basis. Neil Bester oversees some terrific wine, and this I know is one that he's particularly proud of. It's been an interesting time for Distel, the owners of Plaisir de Merle. They've sold 8K to the same American group who've bought Warwick from Mike Ratcliffe, and as a whole they're realigning, trimming down, changing their approach to wine, hanging on to some key assets though, and I suspect this will be one of them because as a whole they're making some lovely wine, and this Cabernet Sauvignon foremost amongst it. You tend to think of Cab Sav as being regal and aristocratic, and this fits that profile very, very well indeed. And finally, to a bottle I can only just pick up with one hand. Now, in terms of tasting order, I probably would have had this as the second wine, but I wanted to hang on to it at the end for a couple of reasons. One, it is very, very limited. They only made 600 bottles of this, so I'm very lucky to have one of them. And the other is the celebration of both the estate in question and the broader South African wine scene. 1953, I certainly wasn't around then, I'm not sure how many of you watching were, but 1953 was when Bellevue put their first pinotage in. They're one of the earliest estates to have planted pinotage, and they've still got those vines going, and this is a celebration of 1953 and that pinotage that they put in. So it speaks not just to the old vines but also to the wine that for so many people sums up the heart of the South African industry. Pinotage is our grape, it's one that we hold very dear to our hearts, and this is one of the oldest pinotages we can lay claim to. There's a real sense of history to drinking this, because the reason they only make 600 bottles is because that's all they can make. That's all that's left in terms of the old vines from 1953. And I love what they've done on the back of the label. I'll read it out for you. 1953, a big year, one that saw the conquest of Mount Everest, the coronation of the Queen, the sale of the first colour televisions already. For us back at Bellevue, the real feat of 1953 was seeing true South African royalty settle in our soils, our 1953 block, one of the country's first commercially planted pinotage vineyards. So yeah, it's a real sense of wine history in South Africa. Now, it doesn't hurt that it's translated into a really strong pinotage. It kind of sits in the middle of the road for me. There's some new age pinotage that's a lot lighter, that plays off that Pinot Noir history, and then there's some of that old school pinotage that's a little bit heavier, a little bit more difficult. This sits beautifully in the middle. It's a wonderful tribute to both South Africa's definitive grape, but also an estate that's been making pinotage for so long. And to have it, to be able to drink it, is a real treat. So thank you to the guys at Bellevue very kindly sending up a bottle. I am enjoying it most definitely. In the moment we finish filming, I think I'll be finishing this off rather quickly. And it's a chilly night in Johannesburg, so it'll do the job. We're expecting more cold weather this week, so if you are in Johannesburg, if you are around the rest of South Africa and it's winter, or if you're watching this from abroad and your winter is just a few months away, then have a look at these options. You've got that Asara, the Cape Fusion with the pinotage backbone. It's not terribly expensive, and it's a really nice example of a Cape Fusion, a blend that's got pinotage in it. The Val de Vie, that Cab Sav led blend, the out and out Cab Sav from Plaisir de Merle, or this Bellevue estate. It's going to be a lot harder to find, but well worth the reward of looking for it. A cross section of some terrific red wine that'll make your winter a lot more pleasant. Cheers.